All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for waiting patiently for the intro to finish up. Today, we have a few different PlayStation topics to go over and talk about, different things I want to discuss with you. As you can see, the two main topics we're going to be talking about today has to do with a new leak that reveals just how important single-player games are to the PlayStation 5 user base. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that what we're going to discuss is some kind of shocking revelation. It's not, but I think it just kind of speaks to something that, is, especially when you look at what Sony's doing with the live service stuff. I think it's just particularly important to kind of highlight that this is not something that's going to change, at least not anytime soon. I think that's pretty reassuring to a lot of people. We're also going to be talking about a Naughty Dog developer seemingly speaking out a little bit here and kind of, not aggressively so, but pushing back against the outcry for, whatever outcry is out there when it comes to the remastering of The Last of Us Part 2. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Some other topics we have on the docket that I hope to cover. Apparently, an unofficial Spider-Man 2 PC port with patches is available, which is weird. But obviously, this has to do with the Insomniac hack. I assume Sony is going to do something about this very soon if they haven't already. We're also going to be talking about the first ever PlayStation 5 tablet. Apparently, somebody out there decided to make a PlayStation 5 tablet. It's legitimately a PS5 tablet that you could just take anywhere. Pretty cool. Kind of shocking. Makes you wonder if it's something we could ever potentially see down the line. Yeah, so guys, before we dive into any of these topics, first off, I want to just thank everybody for watching. If you are somebody who is watching this later, keep in mind there should be timestamps. So if there's like a particular topic you want to check out, be sure to refer to those timestamps. And so a shout out to Devil Shooter for doing them. Do me a favor, guys. We have over 150 people here, more people filing in. Be sure to hit that like button. Okay, we're sitting at about 40 likes. Let's see if we can get to 50 likes and then eventually make our way to 100. It helps the streams out a lot. There are 3 ways you can support my content directly. Those 3 ways are becoming a channel member. You gain access to some exclusive perks. We did a members lounge episode yesterday, and you guys seem to really enjoy that episode. We reacted to a video that talks about the future of console and how it seemingly is over. And it just led to a very, I think, interesting conversation. So if you are a member, go check that out. If you are a member, also consider gifting channel memberships. That's the second way you can help out the channel, help support the community, help fund the content. And last but not least, you can consider donating a super chat. Ask a question, give an opinion, make a statement, anything in between. It all helps tremendously. So a big thank you and shout out to everybody who contributes, because without that contribution, I wouldn't be able to do what I do here. And as I'm saying that, we have Corey the Legend Landiga starting us off with a 10 bomb today, starting us off very strong. Guys, let's get some W's in the chat for Corey.
Thank you.
Dude, thank you so much for kicking the membership train off this way. Already at 10 memberships on the day, which is great. So, Corey, I know what you want. You want the MGS theme. I'm sure we'll get the MGS theme at some point today, Corey. So don't you worry. All right. So yeah, 10 more people now gaining access to the members lounge. Just so you know, by the way, I am planning on doing another members lounge today after this stream. So if you are a member, again, look forward to that. Saying I did a stream yesterday. Yes, I did. So I do have to apologize to everybody because my schedule is just all over the place, and hopefully you guys understand. It's just I'm trying to figure out the best way forward on the channel because there are just many different directions I could potentially go in, some working better than others, some make more sense than others. It's a balancing act. So I do apologize for things being kind of all over the place, but going forward, you should see a bit of a shift in the channel. Nothing like major, nothing substantial, but just something that I think you'll pick up on it, and we'll see where it goes from there. So, Corey, again, thank you so much for that, man. We're going to dive into the first topic here, which is this leaked data. Okay. So I actually came across this on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, and I think this is going a little bit underreported, but to me, this is something that is very relevant. Again, there's just so much conversation surrounding PlayStation's future in the live service space. We are looking at Helldivers 2 getting ready to release. We're talking about FoamStars releasing into PlayStation Plus early next month. And it's clear that Sony is starting to, we're starting to see some of these games actually finally come out now. And a big concern for a while has been Sony single player games. Are they going to walk away from them? Are they going to care less about them? Are we going to get less of these games? Are they now deprioritized? Well, if we look at this leaked data, this again comes from the Insomniac hack, because again, there was so much data that leaked from this Insomniac hack. I mean, you're talking about over a terabyte of data. There's still plenty of stuff that people haven't discovered yet. They're kind of still wading through it. And one of the things that recently came out, it says here, newly leaked PlayStation data reveals that PS5 users spent more time playing single-player offline titles than others. And so the thing about this is, if you follow the trail, which I am here, I'm looking at all these slides. Obviously, I'm not going to show you these slides because, I'm not trying to get in trouble with Sony here. This is stuff that was from a hack, so it's technically illegal, but it comes from, and here's the most important part about this, and this is something that I think is critical to the conversation: the timing of this. Okay, well, what's the time frame? Is this Sony just kind of measuring and evaluating the first year of the PS5, the first 2 years? No, it's actually from February 2023, so it's really not that old. I mean, it's just about a year old, but it's essentially, a good chunk of time that Sony is doing this evaluation on. And it says here, as I'm looking at the image, business update, February 2023, PS4 and PS5 platform health. Now, I'm going to let you know that I'm not going to dissect every single slide here. In fact, I'm not going to dissect most of them because it's just so much data. It's insane. It's one of these things where people, are being paid to go over this stuff, and to really kind of figure out what is being said here. But one of the interesting standout things. So it says here, PS5 acquired population is shifting towards new to PS5 cohort, projected to hit 50% by May 23. PS5 is outperforming PS4 in 4 key performance metrics. So that one we did go over, and that was one that was only 27 months after the PS5 launched. 27 months it says here. And then it says here, new to PS5 users spend approximately 25% gameplay hours on free-to-play monthly, 3% for new to PS4 users. That to me is something we might want to pay attention to, just for the fact that I don't know if Sony sees that. They don't really say here. It's just the data. They don't say whether that's good. Is 25% a lot? Is that something that they're really paying attention to? I mean, we look at FoamStars, and even FoamStars isn't free to play. We look at Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is not free to play. It's a $40 game. And then we also consider that Concord is supposed to be coming this year. And I mean, Concord is, what is it? Is it going to be free to play? I don't know. Continuing down this line here, it says new to PS5 users, higher concentration on free to play resulted in lower gameplay hours. So trying to get to the part where it talks about single player games. New to PS5 users don't show the same engagement ramp up speed as new to PS4 users. There's minimal spike in new to PS5 users, full game attach rate compared to new PS4 users. Guys, I got to tell you, there's really quite a bit here. And these charts are daunting to look at, let me tell you. I don't know if any of you guys have actually come across these leaked charts, but they're overwhelming. But yes, it says that PS5 users are spending more time playing single-player offline titles than other titles on the PS5 platform. They don't, as far as I could tell, like there's no data here that says like which titles are leading, like which games are people spending the most amount of time playing. But the question I have for you guys here is this data, do you think this data could be one of the reasons why Sony decided to, you know what, let's maybe slow down our aggressive push towards live service, right? Is that a possibility? I'm considering this as a possibility because it's like not surprising to get this info where it's like, oh, PS5 users like single player games. Who would have thought? I feel like a lot of people obviously know this, right? A lot of people look at PlayStation and they look at it as the go-to place for these big AAA single player games. But there's also the fact that PlayStation is the home to many of these successful live service multiplayer games. Games that people, I mean, in some cases, it's all they even play. So that to me is what is kind of shocking about this, because you would think that games like Fortnite, games like Call of Duty, games like FIFA, you know, these games that are not offline, these games that are not single player, there's so many people spending so much time in this. You would think that this just couldn't be a possibility, right? You would think that there's no way that the data says PS5 users are spending more time playing single player titles than live service. But that is apparently what is being that is apparently what Sony is being told based off of this data. And you have to just wonder, is this making them kind of not rethink their strategy? Because it's not just about time spent playing, because I guess maybe Sony could look at it as, well, maybe we can convert those people, you know, if they're spending all this time on these single player games, maybe we can convert them to spending time on these multiplayer games, right? On these live service games. And that way we have a greater chance of monetization or something like that. I think that is possible as well. But this to me is very important, and something that it gives me a lot of reassurance that Sony is not going to walk away from single player games. And I know that sounds ridiculous to begin with, where it's like, of course they're not going to walk away from single player games, but we actually have like leaked data here from a hack, unfortunately, but data nonetheless, that literally this is what PS5 users are telling Sony, right? When you get to the bottom line, you crunch the numbers, you look at what are they engaged with, what are they spending time playing. The data says PS5 users are playing single player offline games. Now, of course, that's not everybody, but that is, if anything, that should give Sony the confidence to continue to double down and triple down on ensuring that we have a slate of single player offline games to play, right? I mean, not every game is going to be single player. In the case of like Sony Bend is working on a new IP. It seems like it's supposed to be a single player game, but it also is going to have some type of multiplayer element, which I've speculated before is maybe going to be co-op. So this could be Sony's way of maybe trying to just throw a little something in there, right? That it's not going to turn it into a full-blown live service game, but it's going to add another layer of engagement and interaction. Monetization, well, who knows? But I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the roadmap for PlayStation in 2024, and it is just so ironic to me that the one game we know about from a Sony studio is a live service multiplayer PvP game. a shooter. But I'm looking at this data and it's literally saying like, yeah, it is not surprising that Sony maybe hasn't been so aggressive in showing off Concord, right? In showing off fair games. They haven't really prioritized this because the data tells them this isn't really what PS5 users are interested in. There is a demographic of users on PlayStation 5 that, sure, may be interested in this, of course, but generally speaking, they want more of those single player games. And so, we also think about the amount of remasters, the amount of remakes. I know it maybe can feel a little bit overwhelming, a little bit too much at times, certainly. But it's just you have to wonder like if this is a part of it, right? Not necessarily that, oh, we're all begging for more remasters and remakes. I mean, of course, there's some games we want to see remastered and remade. There's some games that certainly deserve it. But you just have to wonder if, like, this is part of the reason when you look at that end of the spectrum where it's like, is this why Sony is so eager to apparently remaster Horizon Zero Dawn? I think some people forget that is a remaster that's currently in the works. It was leaked a while ago. And I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is announced, this year. You do have to wonder if this is part of the reason why Sony is continuing to pursue this avenue of, okay, we should remake this like quickly. We should remaster this quickly. We should do a director's cut for this quickly because this is what people are spending time playing. And we can't necessarily get a new single player game out next year or the year after that. In fact, it might take 5 years because that's just where we are with AAA game development. You can kind of begin to see why Sony is making some of the decisions they're making. You can also see why if you go check the YouTube videos of fair games, of Concord, and unfortunately even of like Helldivers 2 and FoamStars, like you're just not seeing the same reaction from PlayStation fans that you're seeing when Sony drops a trailer for a single player game. You're just not seeing it. And you do have to just, again, look at something like The Last of Us multiplayer getting canceled and wonder, did they look at this data and say, this just isn't going to work? This isn't going to work. The amount of support, the amount of resources, the amount of money that we would have to spend to keep this game running, to make a battle pass every couple of months, when in reality, the data is telling us that this is the opposite of what PS5 users are spending their time playing. You can also begin to understand why Sony is trying to find different ways potentially to monetize their single-player games. I talked to you guys yesterday about how it is kind of insane that Sony did not charge for something like God of War Valhalla, right? When it's like you could have easily charged $10 for that and you would have made a killing, but they didn't. You have to ask yourself, what is the reason for this? Is it simply just a goodwill gesture? Well, that is what it is, no matter what. Will that continue? Will Sony look at stuff like this and think, well, if we can't get Concord to succeed, if Helldivers isn't going to do that well for us, right? If these live service games that we're investing in, that we're putting a lot of hope into, just don't work out, well, what do we do then? Maybe it does come in the form of trying to monetize single-player games in a different way. I don't think it has to be bad. It depends on how it's handled. We've seen other publishers do this, and Sony has kind of strayed away from this mostly, which is interesting to think about. Like Sony never put, as far as I'm aware, they never put like microtransactions into these single-player games that they put out. They never put anything out there and charge money for it that seemed like it was just totally egregious, totally unfair, and totally ridiculous for their single-player games. Again, not that I'm aware of. So you have to then think, if they're going to try to capitalize on this data says this is how important single-player offline games are to our fan base, to our player base. So we can't move away from that. If our live service efforts fail and can't make up that, the revenue, well, what do? Well, maybe it all kind of comes back down to instead of just having every single studio only put out big AAA titles on a, on a cycle, on a rotating basis, maybe you do that, but you also try to funnel in more double A games, right? Like these, again, the games like Miles Morales, the games like Uncharted Lost Legacy. Maybe that really is going to be the way forward for Sony and for PlayStation, knowing that this data tells us that this is what people want. This is what PS5 players want. Of course, I don't mean to make it sound like there aren't PlayStation 5 players who want some live service multiplayer games. There are. Trust me. I see them even here all the time. A lot of people saying, like, I want to see Sony put out some more multiplayer games. And we are going to see that. But I just have to wonder, I guess, and I think this is kind of the whole point that I'm trying to get at with this conversation. When I come across a topic like this, when I see a leak and it's data that's not meant to be made public, and that data pretty much confirms what we all suspected, and that is, yeah, this is what the PS5 user base is gravitating towards, you can begin to see why Sony is in such an awkward position at the end of the day when we are surrounded by so many other video game companies, publishers, that they are so hyper fixated and focused on, well, live service, games as a service, subscriptions, going beyond a single platform, doing this, doing that. And it's like, no one is really talking about the single player game and the importance of that in the same way, where it's like, at what point does a company decide maybe we just double and triple down on that and find new ways to monetize that and make that the way forward and stop chasing all these other things that, sure, they are proven and they do work and they do generate revenue. But this is where I think Sony may have made a very wise decision at the end of the day by allowing Naughty Dog to cancel this Last of Us multiplayer, by taking their good old time with whatever this Horizon multiplayer is and actually even handing it off to NCSoft to work on it for PC and mobile, and to basically just maybe continue to allow your internal teams and studios. We think about the Spider-Man multiplayer game that got canceled. It was supposed to be GTA Online Spider-Man, and it's like, I understand why Sony would want to go for that. I really do. It's obvious why they would want to go for that. But it's like somebody there looked at this data and was like, I don't think this is going to work. I think it's going to be a waste of time, a waste of money, and we're just not going to be able to justify this. So, unfortunately, we still don't know what's really, truly going on at Sony internally right now. We can infer quite a bit from this data, but again, this data was from February 2023. A lot has happened in between that time. A lot has changed. Some of the biggest moves that Sony has made in terms of announcements regarding their business, such as Jim Ryan retiring, such as the cancellation of The Last of Us multiplayer, all this happened after this. So I think this may potentially help paint a clear picture on what Sony is doing right now and why they're doing it, but it still doesn't give us that definitive answer in terms of the bigger picture. When it comes to these live service games versus these offline single player games, I feel like the closest thing I can get to a definitive conclusion here is, well, single player is not going anywhere. These big AAA titles that sell tens of millions of copies for Sony, that drive people to the platform, that sell consoles, that apparently players spend a lot of time playing, yeah, they're not going anywhere. Not only do the development teams like making these types of games, but these are the games that succeed by far the most on Sony's own console and platform. So that I feel pretty confident in saying definitively is not going to change. If anything, I expect further, more aggressive um, growth in this area. And with that, I do think will come monetization. I don't know that that means I expect single player games to go up to $80 or, Sony to kind of slice up these single player games and sell them in chunks. Nothing like that, but just finding other ways, somehow, some way to, again, maybe in the form of these AA expansions. You look at how well Miles Morales did for them. Maybe this is what they're going to start putting more time and resource into, and maybe pump the brakes on the live service stuff, or maybe not. I could be completely wrong. We could end up seeing by the end of this year that, oh no, Sony, just because The Last of Us multiplayer got canceled and just because that Spider-Man GT Online-esque game got canceled, they're not slowing down. They're still going to be just as aggressive as ever. That could be what we still see, because even though this is what they're seeing from the data for PS5 users, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not also looking at the data coming in from other games on their platform, such as Call of Duty, such as Fortnite, such as GTA Online, and they can see how much money and how much revenue these games are making. They can see how much engagement these games are getting on a month-to-month basis, on a quarterly basis. So regardless of what we're seeing from this data, it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. Again, I am confident, but there are no guarantees. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this topic with you because, again, I feel like it's something that's kind of going a little bit underreported, and I understand why. It's because it's not very surprising, right? And it kind of does feed back into the same loop that we've been kind of going round and round on here with, which is like, what's going on with Sony and their live service games? What's going on with their pipeline of games? This doesn't give us an answer, but it at least instills more confidence, if anything, in the PlayStation 5 user base. That if you're wondering, are PS5 players engaged with single player games? The answer is absolutely they are. Like, to a very significant degree, to a critical degree, that if Sony were to do something to truly upset those players and drive those players away, it would do critical damage to the PlayStation brand. And that is reassuring to me. It is, because, it would be, this conversation would be totally different if the data that leaked out was like, yo, PS5 users are spending less and less time playing single player games, and that's actually shrinking. That would be concerning. At least to me, but I'm sure it would be concerning to many of you as well. We have Ice Rezo here with a $5 super chat. He says, MBG, the goal is to use your MAU and increase ARPU, your average revenue per user. Single player doesn't maximize ARPU. Look at Apex, Final Fantasy promo. Yes, this is... I'm glad you bring this up, Ice, because I think this is kind of the conundrum that Sony finds themselves in, where it's like they do have a large player base, right? Like the PS5 users that we're talking about that are playing these single player games. It sucks to frame it this way because it does make these corporations sound very greedy, but it's just the nature of how they operate, where it's like a person... A user, a PS5 user who spends $70 on a single player game like Horizon or Spider-Man 2 or whatever, and they spend 50 hours on that game, that's great. Like, Sony's like, oh wow, they're really spending a lot of time on this game, but it's like, but we only managed to get one single transaction from that customer. Hold on, boss is trying to claw his way in. Sorry, boss was like attacking my door, demanding he come in. I actually didn't realize he wasn't in here. But that's exactly what you're kind of speaking to here. The average revenue per user. It can obviously bode very well for Sony that, like, oh man, look at how much time our users are spending on these single player games we're making. But see, this is the other thing though, Ice. Like, why why wouldn't Sony charge for something like God of War Ragnarok Valhalla? Now, granted, I'm not saying they should. It's just from a business level, if this is their true goal, average revenue per user, we need to increase that. You could have done that with God of War Ragnarok. Millions of people playing God of War Ragnarok, millions of people would have paid to play Valhalla, and you just increase your revenue. You know, like that to me, that's like the simplest way to do that. But you know what it might be? Maybe it's because they think, well, maybe by offering this free DLC and we, you know, we sell. How much is God of War Ragnarok? Is God of War Ragnarok still $70? Let me see. Looks like it's 40. The prices are all over the place here. I'm seeing 70. I'm seeing 40. Well, either way, I guess maybe the idea is we put this DLC out for free. Maybe it makes more sense to do that because it'll encourage people who maybe haven't bought the game, where it's like, oh, not only do I get the full game if I buy it now, but I get a free DLC that apparently is really, really good. Maybe in that sense, you could see how it makes even more sense for Sony to do it that way, because for every sale that drives, well, that's a new user who spent at minimum, I guess, like $40, right? If that's the price it's being sold for now, or $50, and that's more than $10. So in that case, I guess it doesn't necessarily. I don't know. I guess maybe this is Sony's way of kind of experimenting. Like, I'm not saying I want Sony to charge us more, obviously. I don't. I would prefer them to charge us less. But I am also understanding, like, when I'm trying to understand, you know, the business side of things and the decisions they're making, you can kind of see where it's like something that is clearly very imperative to Sony right now, and I think will remain this way going forward, is they do need to find a way to extract more profitable revenue from these single player games. Because if the live service games aren't going to do it, something has to. Or they're just going to have to accept that the profit margins are just going to continue to shrink. But I don't think that's an option. I don't see that being a viable option for them. I don't think they're going to accept that. It is unfortunate that single player does not maximize the average revenue per user, but a part of me almost kind of wishes that Sony would stop caring so much about being in the upper echelon revenue wise, right? And I get why they're going to. It's almost ridiculous for me to even state that, because it's like they're Sony, they're PlayStation. Of course they're going to go in this direction if this is where most of the industry is going, if this is where most of the money is being made. Every company is going to want to try to go in that direction because they want a piece of that pie. I think anybody can understand that, but you just almost kind of wish to a degree that Sony would just look at something like this and say, you know what, let's just continue with this. And maybe if we have to find a solution to lowering the cost of our game development and finding a way to make it so that it's not as risky, maybe we can find a solution to that outside of chasing that. Maybe these things are separate. Maybe they are separate. I feel like when Sony has talked about their live service ambitions, they've really kind of implied that they're not separate, that they are directly intertwined. But at this point in time, they could be separate. They could be two separate, ongoing things that Sony is pursuing that do not really intersect with one another. At least not now. They're not planning for that. You know, kind of have to have a plan B, so to speak. It's unviable, unsustainable. Is it? Is it? Yeah, I don't know. It seems like right now Sony's business model for PlayStation, I mean, I don't know that I feel confident in saying that it's definitely unsustainable. Like currently, I mean, just looking at something like Spider-Man 2, I think, yeah, that is unsustainable. Like, not every studio and every game can do what Spider-Man 2 is doing. That would be ridiculous. Not every game can do what games like The Last of Us Part 2 are doing, right? But I don't know. I have a difficult time believing that there isn't a more reasonable solution that would leave everybody happy here. That to me is what I can't stop thinking about, where it's like, well, if the PlayStation 5 user base is communicating to Sony that we want more, like we love engaging with these single player games and the single player content, um, I just don't see how. I just feel like maybe Sony would be wiser to think there has to be a different way to monetize this content or a different way to develop it with a certain monetization in mind that is it's not converting anything into a live service, converting anything into multiplayer, making it so that now we need to worry about battle passes and stuff, and we need to worry about being able to sell skins for $20. I don't know. Maybe the solution is not nearly that simple. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony has already kind of went through this numerous times and they ran the numbers and they're like, yeah, that wouldn't work either. Maybe it would generate too much ill will towards them. You know, I mean, you saw the way people got when they announced that they were going to charge $70 for PS5 games. And then we saw how people got when Sony said, yeah, we're going to charge $10 for upgrades from PS4 to the PS5 version. And that was Sony's way of trying to, you know, again, get more revenue from these single player games. And, you know, it's understandable why people would get annoyed because it's like, oh, you're asking for more money. But it's like, you you look at that and you can see why Sony's like, well, people seem to be totally okay paying $20 a pop for a skin. So maybe that, you know, no one's raging about that. So maybe that's what so you kind of, when you look at that, right? Like, you can't blame them for just thinking that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be increasing the price of our games. We shouldn't be charging for upgrades. We should just be selling skins for $20 a pop. Now, I don't think either sounds great, but I don't know, man. A $20 skin, I guess I can understand why some people are okay with that because it's like, well, how does that affect me? So I get that too. What if they made the game single player but have continuous additional DLC packs? Yeah, I mean that to me that's a viable option, but I guess it comes down to how expensive is it to develop that DLC. You know, how well does that DLC need to do in order to justify itself versus how much dev time goes into a skin that you can then sell for $20 a pop? What are the profit margins on that? You know what I mean? That's where I think things get kind of messy where it's like, damn, dude, I don't think there's a reality where Sony doesn't go down this path regardless of even how important single player games are to PS5. But if anything, this at least tells Sony, like, don't neglect single player. We have Jake Skew 27. He drops another membership gift. He follows Corey Landiga's 10 bomb. It says here we're at 12 members, which is interesting because I didn't get a notification that we got another member. I'm just trying to make sure I missed something here. I don't know what that's about. It says we're at 12 members, so I'll put the counter at 12. But Jake Skew, thank you so much for that, man. I have a super chat here from Broccoli Rob. He says, day one release to PC where the player base is 1.4 billion. Broccoli Rob coming in with the potential solution here. And we have Hellbound 1981, another legend showing up, dropping 5 more membership gifts for the community. Hellbound, thank you so much, my friend. Really appreciate that support. Guys, let's get some W's in the chat for our good buddy Hellbound here, always showing incredible support. He brings us up to 17 members on the day, so We are very close to crushing this goal. Broccoli Rob, I mean, this is... All right, so let me ask you guys this question. I don't know that your answer is going to change the outcome. It won't, but it's still an interesting question to ask nonetheless. And that is, if Sony were to announce that they're going to release their single-player games going forward day one on PC, on like Steam, right? It does open that door where it's like 1.4 billion users now could potentially buy our game day one. What would we think of that? If Sony said, we're doing this so we can sustain this business model, what would we think? And we have Matt Fu. Matt Fu coming in out of nowhere, dropping another 5-bomb on us. He brings us up to 22 members. Matt, thank you so much for the membership gifts, man, and thank you for the support.
Thank you.
Get some W's in the chat for Matt here. So now we're just a couple of memberships away from hitting the goal of 25 members today. Thank you guys so much for that. It's an interesting thing to think about, the idea of Sony dropping their games day one. I mean, there's also the worry that people might pirate the games, but I don't know how how prevalent is that for PlayStation games? Like, do a lot of people pirate Sony's games on PC? I think that's kind of a tough one, because it's like, on one hand, if Sony were to do that, it would, I think, inevitably hurt console sales to a degree. I don't know that it would make it so that people will just stop buying consoles, or that nobody's going to care about consoles, or suddenly the PS5 console or the PlayStation console is irrelevant. I don't think it would do that, but I think it would hurt sales of their console to a certain degree, that it would at least slow it down a little bit, It would definitely cause a lot of people, I think, to say, well, I'm just going to go play on PC then, right? And we have Corey, the legend Landiga. He takes it home. He drops another 5 membership gifts for this community. Crushes the goal of 25. Brings us up to 27 members. Corey.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for doing that, man. Hey, boss is trying to steal the show again. Boss is always trying to steal the show. Let me update the goal for you guys here, and we'll continue with our conversation. So Corey brings us to 27. Thank you guys so much for that. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, so to anybody who was gifted a membership, if you're here today, you now have access to the members lounge, okay? Ice Reza with a $5 super chat says, the leaks also show that million digital sales make more than 4 million physical sales in profit. They make approximately $35 from physical sales. Yeah, that's true as well, Ice. I totally overlooked that, but you know what? I came across somebody, I forget who it was, I heard talking about that. That dude, that right there tells you everything you need to know about why there's a digital PlayStation 5, why Sony obviously really wants people to start buying their games digitally. And I get that. Like, that is another way that Sony could extract more money from their games. But there's also still a lot of people who buy games physically on PlayStation. More than you would think in some instances. Was it Colin that said that? Yeah, it probably was. There's a lot of people still buying physical games on PlayStation, but as you're pointing out here, these digital sales, man, Sony makes so much more money off of every game that they sell you digitally, especially when it's their game. When Sony sells you a game like Spider-Man 2 or God of War Ragnarok digitally, they are getting every single dollar from you. They do not have to give a penny to any middleman, It all goes to them. So I understand why Sony would want that to increase, obviously, more people. But the good news for Sony is that they seemingly don't have to do anything. As sad as that sounds, but Sony doesn't have to try to convince people to buy games digitally. Nothing like that. People are already choosing to do that. I think Sony's just kind of sitting back and saying, well, you know, we just wait it out. Almost everybody eventually will convert to digital. Sad to say, but that is what's currently happening. But yeah, definitely something I think worth pointing out there, Ice. Something worth keeping in mind. Not necessarily something that I think Sony will try to exploit in any way. But you do have to wonder if Sony is looking at PC as... See, I still get the feeling that Sony is afraid, if not afraid, just very, very hesitant to put their games, their single-player games, day one onto PC and console for multiple reasons. But I think this is another area where they look at live services. Look, we can do this with our live service games, not just because it makes sense for the player base, but because PlayStation, our core PlayStation fan base, can't even get upset about that, right? A game like Helldivers launching day one on PC, maybe there's some people a little bit disgruntled about that, but generally speaking, I think everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. It's a multiplayer co-op game. Increase the player base. No harm there. But if Sony then turns and says, Wolverine's going to drop day one on PC. I mean, that's a whole different story. Not just for the player base. Like, that's obviously going to cause, an uproar in the PlayStation community and just across the gaming landscape because it's something so, like, wow, they're doing it. But Sony themselves might be worried, right? They might be worried of, like, well, we want people to buy our console, right? Like, we want people to be in our ecosystem, not the PC ecosystem. I don't know, man. You just have to wonder. You have to wonder how important, at the end of the day, we know how important single-player games are to the PS5 community. That we know based off of this data. But we then have to wonder, how important is this data to Sony themselves? What are they going to do with that? Are they in the process of trying to figure that out now? Probably. Will they figure it out? I think they'll try. I mean, in my opinion, worst case scenario, Sony has to retreat. Worst case scenario, Sony has to just get back to the basics and say, well, you know what? We sell consoles. We sell them pretty well. We have a lot of great studios that make great games, a lot of single-player games. Let's push that as far as we can get it to go and just keep that sustainable as best we can. Maybe not worry so much about these other things, but I think that's just like worst case. Like if every other avenue they pursue fails, if live service fails, if mobile fails, if PS Plus, even if they expand PS Plus, it still stagnates. I think that's their. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, dude, to me, this is proof that the core PlayStation fan base is what Sony would fall back on. I know that's obvious, but it's just worth reiterating that if things really didn't work out for them in the way that they're hoping they will, they would have to fall back on the core PlayStation fan base that, are people like me and you that are like, can't wait for that next big single player game, from a PlayStation studio. But I wanted to talk about this with you just because I thought it was pretty interesting. I do want to move on to the next topic, though, guys. So before I do that, please do me a big favor. We're sitting at 127 likes. We have over 360 people here watching, which is great to see. Do me a favor, hit that like button for me. Let's see if we can get that up to 150 likes. I think we can. I think we can do it. I want to move on to the next topic, which talks about a Naughty Dog developer who speaks out against something that I've been seeing a lot of recently. So this is being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. Naughty Dog veteran Matthew Gallant has addressed the polarizing response to The Last of Us remasters, stating that he doesn't understand why the idea of a remaster evokes backlash from a portion of the gaming community. Gallant directed both 2022's The Last of Us Part 1 and the upcoming Last of Us Part 2 remastered. During an interview with VGC, Gallant was quizzed about some of the negative reactions to the remasters, particularly towards The Last of Us Part 2, in response to which he said that the upcoming game is the, quote, best way to play, end quote, Part 2, and that there is an audience for these new releases. I don't understand some of the consternation about what The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered offers, Gallant said. If you're a new PlayStation owner and new to the franchise, we want to get you the best experience with all the hardware features on a PS5 native version of the game. My sense is there's an audience for this whom the idea of a PS5 version is thrilling. Gallant does understand that remasters are not for everyone, though, and he's fine with that. So I found this to be interesting because as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, this is the first time we're hearing from Naughty Dog themselves, like at least the director of these remasters. We're hearing about, their thoughts on the remasters and kind of acknowledging the negativity. Hold on. We have a situation in the chat. Should KT the GOAT have been banned? Let me see really quick what's going on. It was unhidden by Devil Shooter and then hidden by Space Gambler. What did he say? I would have to see what he said. KT the GOAT. No, I mean, I could understand why. It's kind of a 50-50 thing here. Like Space Gambler, I could understand why you would want to do that. He is being pretty rude. So I'm gonna say to just make a call here right now. He doesn't have to be banned, but just straight up, like, don't call people dick riders. Like, I feel like that should go without saying. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you call one of my mods that and then you get banned by that mod, I don't know how I could feel bad for you. Like, if I called somebody that, in a chat, I would expect to get banned by them because you're just being extremely rude. But so I'll just put it that way, So we'll leave it at that. We'll just leave it at that. You're saying okay, all right. I'll just say this. I don't mind disagreements. Disagreements are totally fine. They occur all the time in the chat. Space Gambler saying you asked him to be more mature, and that was his response. All right, well, I'll just say this. No name calling. It's that simple. All right, just that I agree. Like, just if you want to have disagreements, that's fine. Just be mature about it. Once people start name calling, I'm going to be honest. Whoever starts the name calling first is good. If they get banned, I'm not going to feel sorry for them. It's that simple, because it's like we are all, well, as far as I'm aware, we're all adults here, or at least we should act mature about it, right? So we'll just leave it at that. I think that's pretty simple. Okay. Keep it civil. There we go. But getting back on topic here. Well, I have 2 super chats. I'll read these super chats and I'll talk more about what this Naughty Dog developer had to say, give my 2 cents on it. Chris Brown with a $5 super chat says, bought a PS3 and tons of games for $5 each. The games are so fun and simple compared to now. Enjoying my time on there a lot more than modern games. That's really interesting, Chris. Yeah, we kind of had a conversation about this yesterday, which I'm not going to go into, but just kind of comparing the games of today to games that came out during like the PS3, PS2 generation, how they just feel like there's just so many aspects of these games that are so dramatically different. And it's interesting because we were talking about it in the context of them feeling dated, but it's so fascinating that you're saying you're enjoying your time playing these older $5 PS3 games than you are with modern day games. Maybe it does expose one of the potential problems here, and that is that maybe the way in which games are getting bigger and bigger doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting better. It's an interesting thing to think about with the gaming industry right now, but I'm glad you're having a good time, Chris, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. We also have New Soul 9 here saying, MBG, that's the thing. The basic is what's killing them. The reason they are pursuing all of these things is because they are seeing their business model is not keeping them afloat due to cost. Yeah, and again, that is the conundrum that PlayStation is facing right now. That I think it's not just exclusive to PlayStation. I think that this is an issue that is facing the industry as a whole, the AAA games industry anyway, where the cost of everything, including game development, but also things like marketing and whatnot, it is skyrocketing. It's just increasing more and more, and the need to sell more and more, the need to reach a bigger audience, a wider audience, the need to increase your demographic so that way you can make more revenue and in turn make enough profit to even just sustain it, let alone make it a profitable endeavor. Yeah, this is the situation right now. And so it's just a tough thing to even continue to analyze at this point because I don't think anybody knows the answer. I don't think anybody knows, like, well, this is exactly what Sony should do. Like, just this thing right here. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's a bunch of different things they may have to do. They may have to experiment with. They may have to take a chance on to see how it works. And I do think that, guys, I'm telling you, Concord is going to be... It's going to be the canary in the coal mine, man, for Sony and live service. I do, because this is the first game. I don't count Helldivers 2 because Helldivers 2 is a sequel and it's not like from a PlayStation-owned studio. It's a game I count as like, oh, a nice little enjoyable multiplayer experience from PlayStation to change it up a bit. That's nice. But for me, it really is going to come down to Concord. This is the game that Sony is backing and saying that, like, we're behind this. We're so behind this, we bought the people who made it. And we put our stamp of approval on it. It's also going to be their first game. Their first true live service game. You have to imagine that they saved the best for first, right? Where it's like, we need to have the best first impression possible because we got to win people over here. So I just can't help but think, New Soul 9, when you mention these things, knowing that this is part of the reason why Sony wants to have a successful live service game or two. If we see Concord just totally crash and burn, I'm not sure. I know that there are going to be some people who are going to celebrate that. Like, oh, yes, death to the live service PlayStation game. But it's like, ooh, I don't know, man. Maybe it would be better if it finds its own space to exist in and succeed in, separate from the other things that Sony does. Because if let's say Concord does succeed and it surprises everybody and it's very good and it's like, wow, man, this has a big player base, it's making Sony a lot of money, that would be kind of amazing in a way, because it's like, well, Sony solved their problem. They can now justify continuing to make these games and not have to get desperate and find a different avenue that maybe doesn't even make sense to their console business model, right? That they want to stick with, to justify the rising costs and the cost of these games that they want to make. So, in a way, I guess I'm trying to say I am rooting for a game like Concord. I'm still just very nervous about it. We don't know anything, but I am rooting for it in that if Sony can get that successful live service game right out of the gate, then I think that would be a good thing for the PlayStation brand, and I think that would be a good thing for even PlayStation players. We don't have to like sit here and watch failure after failure after failure that potentially doesn't lead to anything successful. We will see, man. We will see. I think we're going to see soon too, potentially. But getting back to this Naughty Dog developer, just to reiterate, basically what he's saying, it's the director of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered and The Last of Us Part 1. What he is saying is that he doesn't understand the consternation around these remasters and remakes, and he's addressing the kind of hate that these remasters and remakes have been getting. And my feeling on this is that, well, I don't think he's wrong, right? But what I do think he's doing is purposely leaving out critical context. And I don't expect a Naughty Dog developer to add this context, because it kind of goes against the grain for them, where it's like, of course, they're not going to acknowledge this. But to me, the simple reality is that people aren't mad at a game like The Last of Us Part 1 existing. People are not mad at a game like The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered existing. They're upset because that is all we've gotten from Naughty Dog, with nothing new on the horizon. You know? So that's where I feel like the disingenuous part comes in from Matthew Gallant here, where he is not either aware or willing to acknowledge that, dude, people are not, this is fine. Like, this stuff you want to do is fine. We all expect it to a degree, but it's like, you can't pretend that people don't have a good, valid reason for being a little bit upset with your studio, and that this seems to be the only thing you guys are pursuing. And we have yet to get a new game announcement from you since we talked about this recently. When was it? 2016? Is that the last time a new game was announced from Naughty Dog? So I think that's all it boils down to, is like, you know, if I had anything to say to the director of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, it's that, look, man, you wanted to remaster The Last of Us Part 2? No problem. You want to remake The Last of Us Part 1 for PS5? No problem. But where the real problem lies is you haven't announced a new game since 2016. That's a problem. That is a big problem. You know, in my opinion, like, maybe it's not necessarily a big problem, but the problem becomes inflated when you are pumping that stuff out. Here's a remake. Here's a remaster. Here's the Uncharted remasters. When you're pumping that stuff out and there's still no new game announcement, that is a problem. And I think, you know, that's the simple answer to it. We have Disco Cobra 2013 with another $20 super chat. Disco, thank you so much, man. You're saying that video points out how the Microsoft plan is to build out their ecosystem, making their games available everywhere, just like Fortnite being cross-platform. We might see more hybrid consoles like the Switch soon. Yeah, the video that Disco is referring to is the one that we reacted to in the Members Lounge yesterday, which was a good video. Thoroughly entertaining, definitely caught my interest. Yeah, it is fascinating to think about. So I'll mention this. This is kind of a little side topic we're going on here. But in that video we watched yesterday, the person who made the video said that Nintendo exited the console market, or the traditional console space, the home console space, in 2017. Like, Nintendo exited the console wars in 2017 with the Switch. And I found that very interesting because I never really looked at it that way. But it makes the most sense where it's like, it is true that anytime I think about Nintendo, I don't like, I'm not thinking about PlayStation competing with Nintendo. I'm just thinking about Nintendo doing their own thing and Sony doing their own thing. I'm not thinking about Xbox competing with Nintendo. It's the same thing. And it just kind of, framing it that way in that, yeah, they kind of just, they kind, let me say this. Something that video highlighted, and again, I know that some people are missing the context here because they didn't watch the video with me, but something that video highlighted to me, or something I walked away with, I guess you could say, is that it almost seems like between Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft and Nintendo, they did leave the traditional console war, right? Like they're done. And they're walking completely different paths because I don't know, I guess that they just realized that for them, this isn't going to work. Nintendo realized that with the Wii U and the need to innovate with the Switch. Microsoft realized that with the Xbox One and the realization that we lost the most important, as Phil Spencer put it, the most important console generation to lose that is going to have permanent repercussions that we will never recover from, right? That there's just no way coming back. We're coming back from this. And that just leaves Sony. And it is so interesting now to see that if Sony really is at a point where they just don't really have competition in the traditional console space anymore because Microsoft doesn't care, Nintendo's doing handheld hybrid, and then you also see it come to light that Sony's also struggling financially, profitability wise, right? Like they're just, the numbers are inflating, they're having trouble keeping this under control. I mean, I don't want to say that Nintendo and Microsoft were right and Sony was wrong. That's basically the way the video framed it, right? If you watch that entire video, it essentially framed it that Nintendo was right to do this, Microsoft was right to do that. Meanwhile, Sony's looking like Blockbuster. And it's like I don't know that it's that simple yet. Certainly not. There's still plenty of time for Sony to do a lot of different things, but you do have to begin to wonder if Sony doing something somewhat drastic after the live service push, that is. Because I think the live service push itself is a little bit drastic, but not so. I guess I'm just trying to say that Sony making live service games isn't like, oh my God, like this is unthinkable. Maybe to some people, but generally I think most people are like, okay, well, it's different. It's not necessarily what we're excited about, but it's not super surprising either. That compared to Sony doing something like, oh yeah, we are going to do a handheld hybrid console as well. We are going to try to, penetrate two different markets at one time, just like Nintendo. Or Sony deciding, you know what, we are going to get much more invested in PS Plus and grow PS Plus as much as we can. Or we are going to start doing day one drops on PC with single player games. Like Sony doing stuff like that, I think would be more surprising overall because every time they would do something like that, it validates what the other competitor, well, non-competitor at this point, is doing. It validates that, when they said, yeah, we're going to do this, and it might not make sense at first, but trust us, this is the way we got to go. And, there were people who doubted the Switch. I was one of them. Dude, I thought the Switch was going to be a failure. I'm like, dude, they're crazy. This isn't going to work. And I was as wrong could be, where it's like, holy shit. This is unheard of, and it's a massive success. I still look at Microsoft and I don't know that I think at the end of the day, we might discover that we weren't necessarily wrong about Microsoft's approach, where like when Microsoft was like, yeah, we're going to just become the Netflix of gaming. But I just think at the end of the day, Microsoft found their out And Microsoft's out was we need to buy publishers. Like we have to buy publishers that have massively successful, like dominant live service and mobile games. We need to solidify our place. So like no matter how much we fail in this area or that area potentially, we're good. Like our ass is recovered. Sony doesn't really have that. Nintendo in a way I think does have that with their IP. I wouldn't necessarily say they have that with the Switch, because the Switch 2 could, I'm not saying it's going to, but could you imagine a reality where the Switch 2 is a failure? What would happen to Nintendo? Like, would they be okay? Of course they would. I guess at the end of the day, Sony could be okay too if like it really came down to the wire where it's like you can't grow this market anymore. You can't, you're failing with the live service. You're failing with mobile. PS Plus is shrinking. The walls are closing in. Would Sony buy a publisher? Maybe. Would they just become a third-party publisher? Maybe. Are these things that Sony wants to do? Probably not. No. Definitely not, I would say. In the case of becoming a third-party publisher. But it's like you do just have to wonder, is the market shifting to a degree in which at the end of the day, whether that's 10 years from now or 20 years from now, are people just going to decide that we just don't want to support specific ecosystems anymore? Like, it just doesn't matter to us. We just want and we expect just games to be everywhere. Like, is that really where it's headed? I don't know that I feel like I can answer that. I think the answer is a big maybe. But Disco Cobra, you got me thinking back to that video again. I do wonder if I really do wonder if Sony will pursue that one day, a hybrid console. Because one of the things that people have kind of questioned Sony about or questioned them on with the PlayStation brand is, why did they just totally concede the handheld space to Nintendo? Like, why is nobody competing with Nintendo in this area? Except maybe now we have the Steam Deck, something like that. But even then, I still don't think that that's a direct competitor to the Switch necessarily. I mean, I've speculated this before. I've speculated, like, what are the chances that somewhere along the line, maybe if not the PlayStation 6 generation, but if Sony wants to justify development of a PlayStation 7 console, over a decade from now, maybe that is the time where it's like, we need to make this thing a handheld hybrid because technology has advanced so much. We now can just, again, we can take on two different markets. Kill two birds with one stone, essentially. Like what Nintendo did back with the Switch, but now the technology is caught up. Like the reason why I think Sony can't do that now is because people do expect Sony to be at the cutting edge. We do expect good graphics. We do expect your games, frankly, to not look like Nintendo games. No offense to Nintendo games. They don't look bad, but I think you know what I'm saying. Like there's a sense of like realism and the ray tracing and the photorealism and all that stuff. That is, I think, an expectation for PlayStation that they've created themselves. So this is why I don't think that they could just simply pivot to like making a handheld hybrid until years down the line when the technology is so caught up that it's like, well, yeah, we could do this no problem. We could do this in an affordable manner. We'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. But Disco Cobra, I appreciate the super chat, man. Appreciate you kind of getting me going off into that direction again. But just to circle back around here to what this Naughty Dog developer, Matthew Gallant, the director of The Last of Us Part 2, I meant to ask you guys, like, what do you think about his comments saying he doesn't understand why people are getting so upset and so mad at Naughty Dog for the remasters and the remakes? I mean, is that something that you think is kind of understandable from his from his angle? Or do you think that's something that's just kind of like, well, it just sounds like a kind of arrogant developer who is out of touch, or if not arrogant, but just an out of touch developer who is just not paying attention? I'll be honest, to me, it seems like it's kind of out of touch. Yeah. He should understand it. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Maybe I mean, you have to imagine he does, right? Like, you have to imagine he's just saying it that way because I guess on the other side of it, what is he going to come out and say like, I get it, fans are see, maybe this is part of the problem with Naughty Dog as a studio, and maybe Sony as a whole, but certainly Naughty Dog. Maybe part of the problem is they just refuse to acknowledge like the portion of the fan base that is giving like some valid criticism here. And I think that that is what is creating maybe unnecessary friction. Sorry. Unnecessary friction within the fan base, where it's like, if we just kind of treat people who are frustrated with these remasters and remakes as like, no, you're just crying like a baby. You're just, you're just throwing a tantrum. You just, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of treat them like that, or just pretend like, oh, I don't even know what you're upset. What are you talking about? Why are you upset? You have no reason to be upset. Rather than just acknowledging that, like, because here's what I think to myself: would it be so hard for somebody in his position, or even somebody like Neil Druckmann, to just acknowledge, like, I understand why some fans are feeling frustrated because we haven't announced any new games. Like, even when it comes to thinking back to when they announced that they had to cancel or shelve The Last of Us Online, when I think back to the way that was worded, I mean, there was very little sympathy in there for the fans. There was a little bit, but it was almost just kind of like, well, what do you want us to do? When I don't know, and I just feel like Naughty Dog is a studio. They just are. I'm not trying to be too harsh on them, because I think there's a lot of that. I think some people get too extreme with Naughty Dog, where it's like, I hope that studio dies. They're dead to me. Like, I get it. That's fine. That's fine. And maybe that's why they act like this. But I just don't think it would be so bad for Naughty Dog to just acknowledge that fans really want you guys to just acknowledge the portion of the fan base that is dying to see a new game. To acknowledge that there is a portion of the fan base that is tired of the remakes and the remasters, and they're tired of The Last of Us, and they just want to know. They don't even, like, it's not like we're expecting Matthew Gallant in this interview to say, you know what, guys, I'm here to announce our new game because we know you're so upset with the Part 2 remaster. No, but to just say, we know that you guys are eager for something new, and this is just here to hold you over. You know what I mean? Just just put a little bit of energy in that direction. That's all. I think that could go a long way for Naughty Dog. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a PR expert. Maybe their PR people over there like, don't ever acknowledge it. Don't ever acknowledge them. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they're being told. They're trying to just keep on that, very straight and narrow path of, you're either with us or you're not. And if you're not, well, you're never getting acknowledged. I don't know. I was a little bit surprised to be reading this today. You say you think I'm projecting. I might be. But I was just a little bit surprised to read this, because the headline again was like, I saw a couple of different headlines basically saying that, like, Naughty Dog director acknowledges, or like doesn't understand why fans are upset. And it's like, that has to be some bullshit, right? Like, how could you not understand why some of your fans are upset? Ansel says, no, you're right, MBG. They have to be better when it comes to PR. How you communicate with your fan base determines a lot. Yeah, it's to me, it's no wonder they weren't going to do this live service game, because think about it, like Naughty Dog very much comes off to me, at least under Neil Druckmann, because I have to admit I wasn't paying as much attention to Naughty Dog prior to Neil Druckmann taking over. That was when I really started to kind of pay attention to them. Although it did seem like before Neil Druckmann took over, a lot of people were very happy with Naughty Dog. I'll be honest. But again, not trying to like pin it on Neil Druckmann. I'm just saying that he is the president of Naughty Dog. It seems like ever since he kind of rose to the top there's just a different attitude that this studio has. And it is we are above even acknowledging, like, I don't know. I saw yesterday, and I'm curious what you guys think of this. Joel is playable in the no return mode in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and every character has specific traits. And people discovered that one of Joel's specific traits is he's more resistant to melee attacks. And it was like, what's funny about, like, it is a little bit funny because it's like, of course that's Joel's trait. But I'm not trying to say it's a big deal. It's not. But what it does reveal is they absolutely are paying attention. Like, they absolutely hear that, that part of the fan base and are aware. And I just think it's a little unhealthy. Pretentious, maybe. That is a word I would use to describe Naughty Dog. Yes, pretentious. Absolutely. But it was interesting to me to see that, because like, you guys know what you're doing. It's like that's their way of acknowledging it, is what I'm trying to say. Like, that is Naughty Dog's way of like, yeah, we hear you. And I'm telling you, saying that's the Druckmann effect. Look, I don't want to be I have to be careful how I word this, only because I have a tendency to make things sound more dramatic than they really are. And I really don't want it to be taken that way. But I do think eventually Naughty Dog's attitude as a studio, whether that is the entirety of the studio or just Neil Druckmann himself or whoever, it doesn't really matter. But I do think eventually it's going to catch up with them if it doesn't change. And maybe it will change. Maybe that change is going to come when they're ready to announce their new game. But this kind of attitude and this kind of tightrope they've been walking, where it's like, we are just going to operate as if everything is fine and everything is great and there are no problems whatsoever, and just completely ignore what I guess is a lot of people try to perceive as, it's endless amount of hate. No, there is a lot. There's a lot of hate, but to bunch it all up together and say that that's all it is not true and disingenuous and pretentious, because it's, in my opinion, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to differentiate between, there are just straight up haters that you don't acknowledge. Then there are fans that love you that you do acknowledge. And then there are fans in the middle that, they like you and they care about you as a studio and your games, but they also don't think you're perfect. And they have a couple of things they want to say. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that either. And you don't even have to give it a big acknowledgement. But to me, this is where it's like, seeing that they put something like that, a trait like that for Joel, I do think it's funny. I do. Like, I can laugh at it. But it also does reveal to me that they're laughing at fans on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care. That's what I'm saying. Like, they just don't care. Like, we don't give a shit what you think of our game. We love our game. We made the best game. And we'll laugh at you. And it's like, oh. Like, it makes you wonder, gee, I can only imagine what they think of the Factions fans who were devastated when they found out that The Last of Us multiplayer was canceled. You know? Anthony, you're saying, MBG, what are Naughty Dog's problems exactly? They only make Game of the Years. They never insulted anyone. They just speak when they are ready to speak. Are Rockstar also pretentious? Yes. Yes. Like, dude, listen, man. Rockstar and Naughty Dog are some of the most pretentious studios in the world. Like, there's just an air. Granted, this is natural, though. Like, the thing is, I'm sitting here talking about something changing, but you're not wrong, Anthony. That's the thing. They produce Game of the Year contenders. Everything that surrounds these studios tells them you guys are unfucking touchable. So you can't really blame the people who were part of those studios for being like, yeah, fuck the haters, bro. Like, look at us. Look at us. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, it's like, if you're working at Naughty Dog or Rockstar, you just walk in every day, you see the amount of awards you won. It's like, why the hell would I ever listen to what anybody has to say? But I do think that's where finding that level of success can make you a little bit tone deaf, I think. In that, that's great. Like, you guys do make Game of the Year contenders, right? You guys do have some of the highest quality. But if the day comes where you guys slip, right? Where it's like suddenly the Naughty Dog magic maybe didn't work this time, or the Rockstar magic didn't work this time, or just something like that. If that day comes, you know, suddenly you're going to realize, they're going to realize, man, we have to go and listen to what everybody is saying to us. And I think that's all it comes down to, Anthony. It's not that it's not that the fans themselves know exactly what's best for the studio or the games going forward, because that's not true. But I do think when it comes to any successful relationship between a studio, a franchise, or a new game and a fan base, I think that it does, to a certain extent, have to be a two-way street. I'm not saying that balance has to be 50-50, 50% control and influence from the fan base and 50% from the studio. No, that's way too much. That's way too much. Like, these developers and these directors, like, they have to be in their own bubble in a way to realize their vision. But I just think that I fear that Naughty Dog has gone in a direction where they have chosen, like, they're not going to listen to anybody. You know? Like, they're just not going to listen to anybody. And I just fear that it means that when they eventually hit a wall, which they will. Everybody misses eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I'm not saying I want that to happen. I hope not. Like, I want Naughty Dog's next game to be amazing. But eventually they'll slip up, and when they do, in a less subjective way, that is, you could argue that the Last of Us Part 1 port to PC, you could argue that was that's an objective slip up where you guys just fucked up. And you have no choice but to now communicate with the fans and be like, yeah, sorry about that. Like, we're really sorry. And you're going to get hate because, dude, that's the only time you're willing to listen to anybody. I don't know. It's a complicated situation. And I don't want to make it sound overly dramatic or more dramatic than it is. The reality is Naughty Dog is going to continue doing what they do, and they'll probably be successful. There is a chance they could hit a brick wall with their next game, but I don't anticipate that. I mean, if people believe that Neil Druckmann, I think the next game that Neil Druckmann directs, assuming it's going to be the new IP. Although maybe he's directing Last of Us Part 3 and somebody else is directing a new IP. If people, a lot of people really believe that Neil Druckmann is a bad video game director. Like he's not good. Like he's going to just ruin anything he touches. I want to see that for sure. Like I want to see a new intellectual property made by, like, directed by Neil Druckmann, where it's his vision entirely. So not The Last of Us Part 2, because that's a sequel to a game that he co-developed, co-made with Bruce Straley. I want to see something just from him and the team that he chooses to surround himself with, and I want that to speak for itself. And I want to know, is Neil who we thought he was? Or is he not? Is he actually, whoa, okay, I didn't think he had it in him to go in this direction or to make this type of game, right? Like, that's what I want to see. And that to me would be that's going to be a very fascinating thing to witness. Now, if we get a new IP from Naughty Dog that's directed by somebody else, that's fine too. And he just says, I'm just going to stick with The Last of Us Part 3. You're saying Neil was the co-director of The Last of Us 1, but The Last of Us 1 was also his idea? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, to be fair, The Last of Us 1 is a lot of Neil. But I'm just curious to see, that's all. Because I feel like the only thing that has surrounded Neil Druckmann since he rose up with The Last of Us is that. It's just the only thing that surrounds Neil is The Last of Us. And I just want to know, like, all right, well, what else do you have in you? Like, what else can you bring to the table? And, there's a part of me that's kind of rooting for him a little bit, where it's like, if it's true that he's just like kind of misunderstood, and if it's true that he just gets too much unnecessary hate for the decisions he made with The Last of Us Part 2, if all of this is true, then it means that when we move away from The Last of Us Part 2 and we go to something new, it should be perceived differently then, at least to a certain extent. I don't know. Naughty Dog as a studio to me is just at this point in time, an unnecessarily divisive studio. That's all. When I say that I'm not trying to make this more than it really is or be overly dramatic about it, that's what it boils down to, is Naughty Dog is, at this point in time, in my opinion, a totally unnecessarily divisive studio. It doesn't have to be this way. And for some reason it is. And to be fair, I don't think it's just Naughty Dog's fault. I don't think it's just the fans' fault. I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of Neil and Naughty Dog wanted to do something that would ultimately cause a divide in the fan base. And when that fan base got divided, I think that is what was always going to guarantee that it's just, this is how it's going to be now. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just going to be as simple as every fan looking at each other and being like, this is amazing, 10 out of 10, right? No, now it's going to be, this is amazing, 10 out of 10, and you're going to get at least 5 people being like, no, this is trash, dude. But then you're going to get 5 other people be like, no, don't listen to them. This is 10 out of 10. And it's like, well, man, I kind of just missed the days with Naughty Dog where it was like, no, everybody could just look at it and just say, yeah, this is amazing. So, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds for Naughty Dog? All I can say for myself is that I do not feel the same way about Naughty Dog that I did before The Last of Us Part 2. I just have to be honest. I know that some people might think I'm, oh, let it go, blah, blah. Like, trust me, I'm well over it. I'm just saying that, truthfully, The Last of Us Part 2 shifted how I view Naughty Dog. I can't help that. However, I am very much keeping an open mind maybe Matthew Gallant said what he said in this interview, where he doesn't understand the hate or the consternation surrounding their remakes and remasters. Maybe it's easy for him to say that because in his mind, he knows what Naughty Dog's working on. He's seen the new game that they're working on, and he knows that Naughty Dog is going to pleasantly surprise people. So it's easy for him to say this. That's my hope, anyway. But that's pretty much the second topic I wanted to go over with you guys. Obviously went on a couple of side quests there. But let me move on to this topic here. This one is so weird. Like, I had to reread the title of this article at least 3 times. Unofficial Spider-Man 2 PC port with patches made available, and it's massive. This is being reported by WCCF Tech. The unofficial Spider-Man 2 PC port has just dropped on the web, and it clocks in massively. Some days ago, we reported that development on this unofficial PC port had ceased development, but as of now is being reported on X by PC Focus, a torrent for the port, complete with patches, shaders, and collision is being uploaded. Apparently, the torrent link will be shared on the user's Discord server, but for obvious reasons, we won't be including or sharing any links here. Looking at the picture that was shared, this unofficial Spider-Man 2 PC port clocks in at a whopping 258 gigabytes, quite the size, especially compared to the file size on the PS5. In case you, hold on. Okay, yeah, so that, how? Like, dude, like, Sony is absolutely going to go after this, right? And shut this down, right? Like, this is insanity. Like, how does something like this, it's not, I guess when I consider that Insomniac was egregiously hacked, I guess it makes sense, but man, people wonder why. People wonder why. This to me is messed up and wrong. I don't understand how you could take something like Spider-Man 2 like this, which was acquired illegally through a hack, and then decide, you know what, let's develop a PC, let's take what's there and make a PC version and illegally release it. I just think that's taking things way too far, man. I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised that there are people out there that would do that, but stuff like this, in my opinion, is what gives PC a bad name, you know? What of Wolverine? You're saying it's impressive, actually? I mean, in a way it is, where it's like, gotta hand it to you. Like, I don't know how you pulled that off, but when it comes to Wolverine, there were playable builds of Wolverine, but if you downloaded it, you basically got a like a takedown from your actual internet provider. So I would assume something like that is likely going to happen here as well. MJ missions in Wolverine. Now that would be quite the surprise. But yeah, I don't know that I have too much to say about this. I kind of just wanted to throw this out here and basically just say that, like, I'm just kind of shocked that this happened, that it was like taken this far. Hopefully they avoid the Sony ninjas this time. This is what I don't understand about people like this, though. The Sony fanboys are crying like they're the ones losing money. Like, it's not about money, it's about ethics, man. It's about, you know what I'm saying? Like it's an ethical situation here where it's like, I look, man, it's Sony's problem, but I don't know. I guess that they're just people who have it in their head that they're justified in doing this, which nobody died, man. Calm down. You're right. We should only care about the ethics behind something if somebody dies. As long as no one dies, all is well. You know what's crazy is I feel like people actually have that mentality. By the way, guys, we have over 340 people here still watching, which is awesome. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and for supporting the stream. Do me a favor, hit that like button. We're sitting at 170 likes. Can we get to 200? With over 340 people here, I think we can. I'd really appreciate that. Ethics, a lot of people don't know the meaning. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, especially these days, man. Sony should hire the guy. Yeah, that's one way they could maybe combat it. All right, so there's one last thing I want to go over with you guys here. The last topic I have on the docket today. The PlayStation 5 Tablet Edition is the ultimate modded portable gaming system. Again, being reported by WCCF Tech, the PlayStation Portal system made it possible for users to enjoy PlayStation 5 games away from their console, but requiring an internet connection to work. It cannot compare to a proper portable system, such as a custom version of the console showcased in a video shared online. DIY Perks, who also built a proper slim edition of the console last year, which I saw that being talked about, I didn't cover it though, created the world's first PlayStation 5 Tablet Edition, truly making Sony's current generation console portable, whose creation was documented in the video. The end results are phenomenal, making us wish Sony would really release a similar system. Having released the aforementioned PlayStation Portal console and the PS5 hardware revision, Sony's apparently focused on the pro version of its current gen console. And so that's kind of why I wanted to cover this, because I actually didn't watch this video. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I don't know if I want to watch it together with you guys, but what's interesting, see if I can get this picture of it here. I'll bring a picture of it up. What's really interesting to me about this is that, you know, you see somebody create something like this, and I just can't help but think to myself, like, what if Sony did make something like this? Like, what is stopping them, I guess? There has to be something stopping them. Is it like, really, is it too expensive? Is it not practical? Because when I look at this picture, which I'm about to show you, like, apparently this is the PS5 tablet that was made. And it is just, it's legitimately a PS5. Like, this is a PS5. How? Maybe I'll have to watch this video, like the full video later, or maybe we could watch it in the members lounge or something if you guys want. You're saying it can't be real? Apparently it is. And that's why I'm thinking, like, there has to be something going into the creation and the development of this tablet that makes it totally unfeasible for Sony to create it at an affordable price and then mass produce it and sell it at an affordable price, right? Saying it's like 3 inches thick. That's yeah, but still, when you can, like, look at that, dude. That is the PS5. That's crazy to me. Who made it? It's the YouTuber. Let me get their name here again. The YouTuber DIY Perks. Building the world's first PlayStation 5 Tablet Edition. I mean, clearly this guy was unhappy with the PlayStation Portal and decided he had to make a PlayStation 5 tablet. See, another reason why this interests me, though, or fascinates me, is because we just talked about, like, the possibility of Sony one day deciding they want to embrace the hybrid console model. This obviously is a little bit different than that. We're just a full-blown PlayStation 5 tablet, but you do just gotta kind of wonder if like is what we're looking at right here, like, is this potentially the future of console to a degree where you buy a console that's basically like a tablet like this for $500, has the screen and everything, and all you do is you hook it up to your TV if you want. You take it on the go with you if you want, you know? You just got to wonder. Jay Shaka, you're saying it cost him a fortune and was utter BS. Yeah, that's the thing. I imagine if I watched this entire video and watched this man construct this, like it likely becomes very clear that like, oh wow, there's a lot that goes into this because it's like a highly custom thing. Foldable would be a must at that size. My question is like, how does it not overheat? You know, something this small. Like, look at the size of the even the PS5 Slim. You look at the size of that. This is smaller than that with a screen on it. How do you keep it cool? There has to be some kind of like. That's what I'm saying. Like, there has to be some kind of crazy customization going on under the hood, right? With the cooling. There's 3 fans on the back. Oh, okay. Well, that would explain it. There you go. 3 fans on the back. Well, there you go, man. I love seeing stuff like this, though. Like, just people kind of making their own devices here. That's so cool, though, man. Imagine if you were able to make this yourself and you just have like a custom PS5 tablet that you can use. That's very cool. But I just wanted to throw this out there because I thought this was insane. I didn't really care for the PS5 Slim too much when it was being reported on last year because that was impressive too. It was like really, really thin. It was like that thin. And that was cool. But to me, the PS5 tablet edition is actually much cooler. So I had to share that with you guys. All right. So with that being said, that is all the topics. Actually, I have one last bonus topic here. One last bonus topic from VGC, and they say Square Enix wants players to discover FoamStars is more than just an homage to Nintendo's own arena painter, and it plans to do so by giving the colorful 4v4 shooter to all PlayStation Plus subscribers. But the title here says Square Enix wants you to stop comparing FoamStars to Splatoon. So basically, I mean, this is a long write up. I'm not actually going to read any of it because it's really long. But if you read through it, basically Square's getting a little bit annoyed that people keep comparing FoamStars to Splatoon. But it's like, I mean, come on, man. How could you even ask people to not do that? Have you seen this game? I don't know. Dude, Boss has been cleaning himself a lot lately. I've noticed that. He's been thoroughly like cleansing himself on my streams. Makes me wonder like what is he doing what are you doing that's making you so dirty, Boss? Does he have lice? No. No. You're saying this guy tooled his own heat sinks and copper pipes, built crazy heat sinks. This is wild. Oh, okay. So we went that far with it. Nice. Again, not surprised, man. Not surprised. You're saying we don't compare Mario Maker to Little Big Planet. It's exactly the same. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I can understand from Square Enix's point of view why they probably get annoyed and they're like, please stop comparing this to like stop calling it a Splatoon clone and whatnot. Like it has the ability to maybe carve out its own audience, and I'm sure it is different. At least I imagine it has to be different to a certain extent. I never played Splatoon, so can't say. But we have Jakey Stee coming in with a super sticker of a person flexing, saying boss. Oh, wow, it says boss there. Okay. Jakey Stee loves these super stickers, man. But guys, with that being said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring this stream to an end. Hold on, you're saying my cat is not well fed. Why do you say this? You're saying I don't take care of my cat. What do you mean? I feed my cat every day. Hold on, now I'm taking this personally here. You're saying you're going to go watch the PS5 tablet video later. Yeah, I think I might have to check out the whole video later. You're saying ignore that guy. I'm like, yo, man, come on. Trust me, boss is fed well. But anyway. He's saying ban him. How dare you? How dare you insult me as a cat dad? Saying boss is looking well fed. You know what's funny about boss is I don't know if you guys have, I don't know how many of you have cats, but something I noticed that both of my cats do is they act really interested in whatever I'm going to eat. And then if I try to like, you know, anything that they're able to eat, clearly like any type of meat or whatever, and I try to give it to him. Well, sometimes boss will eat some of the stuff I give to him. Like he'll eat a little bit of bacon or something, or a little bit of steak, but most of the time they act so interested in what you're eating, and then you like here you go, you can have something. They're like, oh, I'm good actually. It's like, well, why are you? You know, it's like I don't get it. Boss on 5,000 milligrams of creatine daily. Yeah, I don't think cats can have creatine. Well, no, actually they can. Cats do get creatine naturally in their diet, but I don't think cats could supplement with creatine. I don't think that's healthy for them. Boss is on TRT. All right, boss is really he's still cleaning himself over there. What time will the stream be tomorrow? All right, so yeah, I do plan to stream tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern. Okay, if I listen, I don't want to say that I'll never have a stream at a different time. I'm sure there will be, but generally speaking, like the time that I like to stream is at 12 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so we're definitely going to stream tomorrow. We will be streaming the Xbox event. What's it called? The Xbox Direct. That'll be pretty interesting. But we're going to be streaming before that, so we'll have other topics to discuss going into that, and that'll probably be what closes out the stream tomorrow, actually, because it doesn't happen till 3. But what we're going to do now, well, actually, we have Jake Skew27 dropping another membership gift. So Jake Skew is keeping it going. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for the gift. I'm going to add that to the counter. We're at 28 members on the day, which is nice to see. You're saying Xbox event tomorrow? Happy days. Yeah, tomorrow is the Xbox Developer Direct, where they're going to focus on some first-party games. It seems like we're gonna get the release date for Hellblade 2, but we're gonna see like Indiana Jones. So it'll be interesting to watch for sure. Xbox will be the one kicking off the events this year first. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna bring this stream to a close, and I'm gonna set up the members lounge, which is gonna go live at 2:15 p.m. Eastern time. So in about 15 minutes, we're gonna hang out in the members lounge for a little bit. So if you are a member, I hope you'll join me. I hope to see you there. And yeah, so with that being said, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, the stream today. Hope you found it informative. I had some good conversations with you. We got 28 new members, so a big shout out and thank you to everybody who gifted memberships or became a member. Got some good super chats today, so thank you guys, as always, for all the support. I am fan funded here, so without that support, I wouldn't be able to produce this content, and I'm very grateful to be able to do so. I also want to make sure I give a special shout out to Devil Shooter. He does the timestamps, so if you see him in the comments doing the timestamps, show him some love, give him a thank you, and we really appreciate that. So, okay, I'm going to go set up the members lounge, so I will see any of my members who are going to join me over there. Everybody else, I will catch you guys tomorrow in the next stream. So until then, Take care, everyone.